you're stuck with me for a few minutes now.
Yay!
We will be reading a couple more scriptures from the New Testament, and then I will be giving you my message, my life story, whatever you want to call it. I still don't know what to call it myself. So we're going to start with Hebrews 6, 9 through 15, and it is found in your pews on page 1868. If you would like that one. Even though we speak like this, dear friends, we are confident of better things in your case, things that accompany salvation. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work, and they love you, and the love that you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. We want each of you to show the same diligence to the very end, in order to make your hope sure. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. And the next one is, I believe, 2 Corinthians 4, 1 to 16. And it's on page 1797. Therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart. Rather, we have renounced secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception, nor do we distort the word of God. On the contrary, by setting forth the truth plainly, we commend ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. It is written, I believed, therefore I have spoken. With that same spirit of faith, we also believe and therefore speak, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead will also raise us with Jesus and present us with you in his presence. All this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. So, now for the whole reason why you're here. So, as has been said a few times, I'm Beth Osborne, now Woodruff. I grew up here in Canisteo. My kindergarten teacher is actually here. I was a member here at the church for so long, along with my mother, Irene Osborne, who was the secretary of the Presbyterian Church, and the one Michelle was talking about, and my grandmother, Evelyn Cairo. I apologize for my sound. My voice is off a little bit. Apparently God has something good planned with us, because we've been attacked with sickness in my family the last 2 weeks. I had a stomach bug for 1 week, and then now I'm having I'm just taking it as God has something big planned for this, no matter what I may see. So today I came to talk about my personal story, as well as the book that I was able to publish titled Hope and Faith. There's a quote that I hold dear to my heart, and I've seen it recently in a new light. To write means more than putting just pretty words on a page. The act of writing is to share a part of your soul with the world. I hadn't heard it until recently, and I realized how true it is in so many ways, and I'll explain that as I go. As has been said many times now, I grew up here in Canisteo. I was, like Arlene said, I was raised in this church since I was young. I can tell you the exact pew that my family sat in for every Sunday, and we chose to sit in this Sunday. We chose the exact same pew. It's always been our pew for as long as I can remember. Because of being raised in this church and raised around Christians, I've been able to know God my entire life and believed in Him for as long as I can remember. There have definitely been times that I've questioned Him and questioned what He's doing in my life. But as I've gone through more things, I've realized that it's all because He has a bigger plan for my life than I could ever expect or imagine. I've dealt with depression on and off my entire life. I remember going through it as a young child and then again as a teenager. I would just come home from school and sleep. I had absolutely no motivation to do anything. I could feel my creativity for writing and my passion for God failing, just like Alexandria in my story. When I was in high school, I met my husband, and now we have been together for almost 10 years. We got married in the same church 5 years ago, and without him and the support of my family and my church, I'm not even sure I would still be here to tell you my story. After graduating high school, I went to college in Brockport. Throughout middle and high school, I wanted to be an English teacher. I had been told throughout my life by numerous people that it would be nearly impossible to get a book published. And that if I wanted to even try and make it as a writer, I needed to have another job or a backup plan. And so I figured that being an English teacher would be the perfect option. I could help students like I wanted to help people, and I could do writing and what I enjoyed. But I wasn't enjoying the classes, and I was letting the world get into my head. I decided that I was going to change my major to accounting. Completely different things. Completely different things. In accounting, I could go wherever I wanted to for work, and I'd find work. But in teaching, I would have a harder time finding work, and more than likely, I'd have to be out of state and away from my family. I could make really good money in accounting, whereas in teaching, I wouldn't get the monetary satisfaction. So I decided to make this decision to change my major after my first semester. But during that first semester, I met some of my best friends in college. Because of these friends, I was able to wean myself off of my antidepressants and feel okay with myself for the first time in a long time. God put these people in my life so that I could get a break from the depression and from the medicine. It felt great. I was happy going to classes, spending time with my friends, going to church, and spending time with Tim and my family. Throughout the next couple of years of college, I would have some days when the depression would sneak up on me and I would feel like a failure. But for the most part, I wasn't struggling like I had been in the past. Tim and I got married in May of 2014, and I had one semester left of college. The first few months were a little rough. Tim had an apartment in Rochester that we then moved into together, but because I didn't have my license to drive, we wanted to move to Brockport where I could walk to and from class and from work. Plus, the area of Rochester that we were living in wasn't necessarily the greatest. We had been driving around Brockport probably about 2 months, praying that we would find a place that wasn't super expensive, didn't necessarily require you to be a student for your housing, and that wasn't going to be in the party type of neighborhood. And finally, we found a place that was for rent. It was pretty decent size for just the two of us, and was fairly close to campus. The whole situation was all God, because we signed our lease for that apartment 2 weeks before we were supposed to be kicked out of our old one. And so we had 2 weeks to make sure everything was packed and to get it ready for get the apartment shown. But shortly after we moved in, I had to start my final semester. And during that last semester, all of the professors were pushing this certified public accountant route, and I did not want that. When I switched to accounting, I knew I didn't want to become a CPA. Becoming a CPA meant spending money that I didn't have on tests that I may or may not pass and then have to take again and pay for again, and it meant that I had more responsibility in the workplace. I didn't want that. But the teachers were always talking about the CPA, about CPAs and about the tests and what to expect in the corporate world. They never talked about simple bookkeepers or the other levels of accountants that you had the option to be and may even have to be before you became a CPA. At that time, I was questioning what God wanted me to do and had in store for my life. I wanted to be a regular accountant, possibly in tax, not some big shot CPA who would have to work extra hours year round. I didn't want to have to go to graduate school and then have to take the CPA exams. But it felt like it was the only option that was being shown to me, especially when I applied for multiple jobs and I hadn't heard anything. But I remember sitting in my living room studying for finals that week when I received a phone call. Throughout college, temporary agencies from around the area come into our classes and clubs and were talking to us about what they could offer us. And so I made a relationship with one of the companies, and they were contacting me and seeing when I could have an interview and see if there was any connections that they could make for me to get a job. And so the next week I went in for an interview with them. They told me of 3 positions that they had open. They were all entry-level accountant positions. 2 of them were for bigger businesses, and when I heard the name I was kind of like, I haven't really heard good things about it. I don't really want to be involved in that company. But there's one that was for a family-oriented business, and I would be working in their corporate office in the accounts payable department. As soon as they were describing this company, talking about how family-oriented it was, they ate lunch together, it was like I knew that was where I wanted to work. I set up an interview with them, and at the same time that I was preparing for my interview with them, I was also trying to figure out if I would need to take another test to get into graduate school and go to the CPA route. That seemed to be the only option that was being shown. I was starting to become impatient with God, but I knew that if He wanted me to work at this place that I felt I belonged already, then He would make it happen. And if He didn't, then He would close the door and make it obvious to me. I went to the interview, and the next day I was offered the position. 2 weeks after completing school, I had a full-time accounting position. You hear the statistics constantly that it's rare for someone to graduate college and to get a job in their major right off the bat. But I was one of those rare ones because I trusted that God would provide for us and that He would not leave us stranded. Shortly after starting my job, I decided that I wanted to try and get Hope and Faith published. I had been having a feeling that God wanted me to publish this book, and so I had to find a way to publish it. First time I submitted it to a publisher, it was approved. I couldn't believe it. My dream that I had had for as long as I could remember was finally coming true. I was finally able to get this book published, something people had told me was nearly impossible. I began to make payments to the company, was waiting to see what the end result would be. But I never got to see the end result with that company. They were very slow to get started. I had to have a certain amount invested, almost the entire thing, before they even would start the editing, the first stage of the process. And when they finally did start that process, it felt like it was taking forever. It would be months before they would move on to the next step in the process. And anytime I tried to email them for an update, they rarely replied to me. And if they did reply, it was like a month later. We got as far as the cover, and I had chosen one of the 2 covers they sent me, and I wasn't entirely pleased with it, but I was like, I have no other option. And then complications started happening. Bad press had been issued about the company, and there were allegations of fraud and espionage, among other things. And I knew I did not want that publicity to be connected with my book. And so you were given either an option, because the company was closing, to either wait until another company bought out your publication, or you closed your contract and you took it yourself to another publisher. And I chose to cancel my contract, which also meant that I lost all the money that I put into that company. And I was crushed. I thought my dream was over. I didn't think that I would have another chance to get my book published. After waiting a few months, probably almost a year, I decided to try and get it published through different publishers. I began to feel depressed again, fighting the feeling of failure even more as each rejection letter came back. They say you learn from failure, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt when you're rejected over and over again and you think your dream is gone. And then the acceptance came. I almost couldn't believe it. Someone finally wanted to publish my book. I wasn't entirely sure how we were going to make it happen, but I knew that we could make it work, and that if this was what God wanted me to do, He would bless it and make it work. The process was very quick. They immediately started on my project before I even had much money invested. As soon as they sent me the cover, I knew it was perfect. I emailed my person back like less than 15 minutes later and was like, this is perfect. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, this is exactly what I want. And I knew then that God had truly blessed this book, and I was on the right path. This company has been wonderful to work with. They were sending at least monthly updates on things, and they took a month, maybe two, for each of the processes, for each step, rather than at least 3 months that the other company was taking. Well, I was originally trying to get published, and still getting used to my new job after college. And Tim and I were also watching our first nephew start to grow up, who's hiding right there. We decided to start to talk about having our first child after we'd been married for about a year. I had never thought that I would be good with children. I was usually nervous and terrified around them. I still am sometimes. But they were usually loud and energetic, and I'm usually quiet, reserved. I'll stick in my little bubble, stay over here, and whatever. So I was scared about having kids, but I hoped it would be different if it was my own child. So we began to plan to have our first child. When we were young, and we still are, and so we assumed that it would happen rather quickly. We did not expect it to take 2 years for us to get pregnant. Throughout those 2 years, I constantly wondered why God was making us wait. Why every month I was still not pregnant and still barren. It made me question God and made me question myself. During those 2 years, I was constantly questioning Him. I wasn't on medication for it, but I definitely was going through a depressive episode. Most people don't realize how much you can hurt someone just by asking when they're going to have children. Some people simply don't want children. Some people have had multiple miscarriages, and some people just are having a difficult time getting pregnant. And so every time that someone asked us when we were going to have children, or if seeing our nephew made us want children, it tore me up inside. I felt like a failure. I felt like something was wrong with me. That maybe I wasn't trusting God enough, or something was wrong. But in those 2 years of waiting to get pregnant, so many things happened for us. If everything had happened when I wanted it to, Tim and I would have our first child in a small apartment and have to carry this baby with the diaper bag, the stroller, and everything else up and down to the second floor of the apartment every single day. We wouldn't have been able to afford the beautiful house that we have right now with a huge backyard and everything. But God's plan is always better than ours. In those 2 years, Tim and my relationship got stronger. We met some great people through the small groups at our church, and we grew closer to God. We were able to get the house. I was able to get better at my job, and I became closer with my coworkers who were then able to give me advice. Finally, I decided to go to the doctors. They diagnosed me with an ovulation, gave me some medication to take the next month and see if it worked. If it didn't work after 3 months, we returned for a follow-up and figure out another route to take. I remember doubting that it would work the first time. I was mentally preparing myself for at least 2 months and figuring, okay, even if it makes 3, that's okay, we'll handle this. But at the same time, I had decided to get baptized by immersion at our church in Greece. I had been debating for probably the 2 years that we were waiting about being baptized by immersion. And less than a month after getting baptized and after doing the treatment, I was pregnant. Through timing, Some may say it was a medication, but it was all God and His plan and me actually listening to Him. I could not believe it when I first saw the 2 lines. I ran down the stairs to tell Tim, making sure that I was not crazy and just imagining the second line like I had done many times in the past. Tim confirmed that I wasn't crazy, and that was the second line. And the next day, I called my doctor's office. It would be a while before I could see the doctor, which was completely normal. I understood that. But my anxiety was already starting to go through the roof. I was worried that if I did anything wrong, even just one small little thing, that we would lose this little miracle baby. I would have daily panic attacks, worried that I wasn't really pregnant, and it was all just a dream. April 6, 2017, I woke up and was so anxious I literally could not function. When I was growing up, my mom and grandma always said that if I still wasn't feeling well after getting ready for the day, then I could stay home. I continued this test into my adulthood, and I still do it to this day. But that day, I couldn't even get ready. I couldn't even make it from our bedroom to the bathroom. I was bawling. My anxiety was so high. My body was telling me that something was wrong. I called the doctor's office, and they got me in to see a nurse practitioner later that afternoon. She ordered some blood work and an ultrasound. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make the ultrasound for another 2 weeks, but the blood work would help ease my mind a little bit about things being okay. And I made a card, a little index card, that I put on my desk the day of the ultrasound that had Psalm 112:7 on it. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. I was terrified of what was going to be shown to us at the ultrasound, but I knew that God had something planned for us. We went there, and they immediately reassured us that there was a heartbeat for one baby. But I had noticed a little blob, another baby on the ultrasound. We had lost one baby 2 weeks prior, when I was 6 weeks pregnant, which just so happened to be the week of April 6th. And so I knew that day that I had been unable to function, I knew it was the day that we lost our child. It was difficult being happy about having our miracle baby, but also grieving our lost child. There are still some days that I cry just thinking about our lost baby. But I know that God is taking care of the baby Riley, and that Riley is there with all the other lost children of people that I know. My anxiety lowered significantly after the ultrasound, although there were still some days that I was worried about something going wrong. At the same time that I was going through all of this with my pregnancy, I was still working full-time. My workplace had just lost their receptionist, and had asked for me to cover the position. I had thought and prayed about it, and decided to do a trial period, and then ended up deciding that I couldn't handle being a receptionist. I gave my mom props for having been a secretary. It's not an easy job, and Barb too. I give you props, I could not do it. And so I was back up into the accounts payable department, and they wanted me to also help with the accounting team. And I was then offered a promotion to the accounting team permanently. And while we were waiting to get pregnant and everything, I had been wondering, like, should I stay with this company? Should I go to a different company? What should I do? And then God opened the doors to the accounting team, and I knew that was where I needed to be. So finally, on November 24th, I went into labor. I was just about to get ready to go Black Friday shopping, sitting on the recliner while talking to Tim and my mom, when my motor broke. I quickly got some food, got changed, and we headed to the hospital. I was already pretty far into labor at that point, and so all of the nurses, everybody was saying I was going to have the baby by May. And I was like, yes, not that long to labor. Awesome. Yeah, that didn't happen. As soon as they got me to the hospital, I said, I need the epidural. Give me the medicine now, please. But the nurses said that there may not even be enough time for that. I was like, okay. But they were able to get me the epidural. I got to yell at the anesthesiologist for talking while I was trying to sit still and get the needle in my back during a contraction. Shortly afterwards, I started to push, and I was pushing for between 2 and 4 hours. Right now, that whole day is kind of a blur, which is probably a good thing. But it just wasn't working. And then our baby's heart rate started to go up and down a little bit. And Tim made a joke to his family that was waiting in the waiting room that he should just bring his shop back to the hospital to pull the baby out. Little did he know that they were going to try to vacuum to get the baby out a few minutes later. Between the failed pushing and the failed vacuum, with the heart rate going up and down and it being so long, the doctor said it was time to go for an emergency C-section. I remember them saying that and actually being at peace about it. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I thought, it was in the back of my mind that I may have to have a C-section. I knew I wasn't very strong, and so I was like, yeah, this may not actually be happening. And so I was at peace with needing it, even though everybody else was kind of freaking out. I was somehow at peace. I was fine with it because it meant that I was going to be safe and my baby was going to be safe too. When they got me into the operating room, they had to give me another epidural because the first one wore off. And because that still wasn't strong enough, they also had to give me a spinal tap. So I was on all sorts of things and really don't remember much. But at 6:58, our son Aaron was born. We were in the hospital that whole weekend, and most of that is still a blur. Again, all the medications, and making sure you're taking your medicine on the right time. So it was like, okay, what's going on? Okay, we're going home. Yay! And it took some time getting used to having Aaron in the house. Late nights, early mornings, lots of diapers and bird claws. But it was a miracle to be holding this precious boy in my arms, and I loved it. I went back to work on Valentine's Day, and I went back full time. It wasn't as difficult as I had expected. We had put Aaron in daycare, and I met with the people enough there to trust them already. And they had an app for our phones that they would update regularly on what was going on throughout the day. But over the next couple of months, things were pretty tough financially. Finances are always tough when you first have a baby. And we had done the numbers, I'm an accountant, so I was constantly checking everything and all that to make sure that we could afford everything. Almost my entire paycheck was going to Aaron's daycare, and what wasn't was barely able to cover our groceries. So I did the numbers for different scenarios. The possibility of another job, switching to part-time, being stay-at-home. And there's a job in Brockport, just a short distance from the house, that offered me a position. But I would have to work Saturdays. They didn't offer as many benefits as what I have currently. And so I decided to stay with my company, but work part-time. So I spoke to my boss, and she was able to allow me to go part-time. I was driving into work the day of my annual review, and I was thinking about the conversation I was going to have. I was going to tell her that I was thinking about different options that I had in my life at that moment. And I remember, clear as day, hearing God say for me to leave my job. First of all, it's scary hearing God talk to you. I almost couldn't believe what I had heard. I didn't think that there really was a way that we could make finances work with me being a stay-at-home mom and bringing in no income. I spent the next week praying and asking people for guidance and accountability that I really would do what God was asking and leave my job. I knew that if I told these people, they would keep me accountable and make sure I actually did it. The next Monday, I gave my resignation letter to my boss, and I finished the next month off at my job. When I was a kid, I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I thought I would always be working. I didn't know how stay-at-home moms did it. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it. And I was wondering why God was so suddenly having me leave my job. And then a month later, I found out why. I was pregnant again. So here I was, with a child who wasn't even a year old yet, and I was pregnant for a second. This pregnancy, it hasn't been the anxiety about being pregnant. There have been times in the first trimester I was anxious about things, but it was nothing compared to when I was pregnant with Aaron. But what was, and still is terrible, was the depression. The depression had returned, and it was coming at me with other needs. With my first prenatal appointment, they had a postpartum questionnaire to complete. I knew at that point I was fighting a losing battle, so I was asked with all the questions about how happy or unhappy I was. And so the doctor put me on medication. I remember them saying, like, do you want to be on this? And I said, I don't want to be, but I know I need to be. This pregnancy has been, I'm about 32 weeks along now, and this time I am pretty much ready for this to be over with already. There have been so many days when I just wanted to lay in bed or lay on the couch and watch Aaron play with his toys or let him watch television. There have been days that Tim's come home and I've just started bawling because I don't think I can handle being a stay-at-home mom. There have been nights that I've wondered, what am I doing here on earth? Why did God put me here? What is my purpose? Why am I going through all of this? There have been times that I've said to myself, that my family can get through life without me, so why am I here? And I realized that I may never know the answer to why I'm here on earth. I may never know why I'm going through this depression, but I also know that God has something bigger planned. I have seen some answers as to why I've gone through things. Because we lost our child Riley, I've been able to walk with friends and family who have had miscarriages. Because it took us so long to get pregnant, I've been able to walk with friends who are dealing with infertility. Because I was a working mom, I can see the other side that some stay-at-home moms don't see, and I know how hard it is to leave your child in daycare. Because I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm able to help other moms that stay at home and that are new moms. Because the first book contract for my book failed, I was able to find an even better publisher that fit my needs and wants perfectly. Because I dealt with depression throughout my life, I was able to write this book about a woman dealing with how to keep her faith when she is dealing with depression and trying to figure out where God wants her. Sometimes we don't always know what God has planned for us, and we may not necessarily understand why we're going through whatever it is we're going through. But God has a divine plan for our lives, and it is bigger and better than anything we could ever possibly imagine. And we may never know how far our reach is. I may never know how many people I touch because of my book. I unfortunately won't be able to know every person that has bought it. But the amazing thing is, God knows all of it. God knows exactly who needs to read my book, who needs to hear your story. He knows just what type of person needs to hear that story. And in His plans, the person who needs to hear it will hear it. God knows everything about us. He knows our past, our present, and our future. And although there are some days I wonder what my future could possibly look like, I know that God has something amazing planned for me. That has been something that I always have to be reminded of. I don't always remember that God has a grand future for me. And I don't always remember the person that God has created me to be. The depression and the devil often make me think so little of myself. And I'm a failure for not being able to be a working mom and take care of my kids. And I'm a failure for not selling tons of books when I first came out. I'm a failure for getting pregnant so soon after my first. And I'm a failure for not being able to help my friends and family in the ways that they need it. But for every lie that the depression and the devil tell me, there is a truth from God. God created me in His likeness. That means that just as I create the story of my characters and put a little bit of myself in each story, God has created me to be like Him. He has put just a little part of Himself in me and has created an amazing story for me, just like you. Each chapter may have its challenges, but it will end in one thing, a happy ending where I'm in heaven with Him. So that's my personal story. It's not over yet. There are days that the depression may win the day and win the battle, but it will not win the war with me. God will always be my strength and my refuge, and because of Him, I will always have hope for my future and faith in what His plan is for me. Hence the name of the book and the reason for Alexandria's tattoos, hope and faith. Our God is a mighty God, and as long as we believe in Him and His plan for us, there is nothing that can possibly stop us.